Good morning, everyone. It is week 4 of programming basics, not week 4, day 4 of programming basics. And we are on our first lecture. And we have our test today after 2. We're going to do some prep. We're going to go over the instructions, maybe some questions that we may have regarding any of the algo challenges. We may go over some of it if we have some time after this morning's lecture, but I don't know. I don't think we have time after the amount of stuff we'll go over. So let's go ahead and dive into the lecture right away. So what we'll do is we'll just give some prep overview of the concepts we'll talk about. We'll go over where they are in the platform so you can reference it. Not this page. We'll go over in the platform so you can reference it, and then we'll run those same algorithms on Trace. Okay, we'll run them on Trace. So we'll build them by writing them on the board, go over it on the platform, and then we'll test it on Trace. Okay, so there's a couple ideas I want to talk about before we get started here. And the first concept is that of a palindrome. Can anyone tell me what that is?
Isn't that a word that's like spelled the same forwards and backwards?
Yeah, it's a word that's spelled the same way forwards and backwards. Can you give me an example? Someone said taco cat. Okay.
Race car.
There we
Taco Cat has probably be the best palindrome I've ever heard.
race car, right? What about Mr. Owl ate my metal worm? Or do geese see God? Or was it a car or a cat I saw? Those are all palindromes. If you were to read them the same way forward as you would backward, you would get the same spelling of everything. Ignoring the spaces, ignoring the capitalization, just the letters themselves, okay? Why am I bringing this up? Well, imagine this was an array. Imagine race car was an array, right? And you are given an array, and in each, value that you're each array that you're giving, you're supposed to determine if the array is a palindrome. Is the word spelled the same way forward as it would be spelled backwards? Well, in order to do that, we need to be able to maybe read the array backwards, right? We need to be able to go in this direction. So that's the topic of this morning. Let's write some for loops, okay? Let's write some for loops that go from, well, let's start with numbers, okay? Let's start with a simple for loop. It starts from a high number, it goes down to 0, and then we'll go from one end of an array to the other end, okay? So let's start with the first one I mentioned. Okay, for loop is okay, this is going to be an interactive lesson today, so I'm going to need you guys' help to build some of these algorithms. We're going to write them by hand, then we're going to copy it into a code, and then run that code to see if we're correct. Okay, so let's write a for loop that starts at 100 and ends at 0. And we'll just let's just start with that. And the do something section we'll leave blank. Okay, the do something section we'll leave blank. We'll just console log the number that we start with. Okay, so how do we write a for loop? Someone give me the instructions to get this started.
Write down 4 FOR and
Okay.
parentheses.
Parentheses. All right, so I have some parentheses here.
Wouldn't it be I equals 100 since you counting down from 100?
Okay. Yes, we can say var I. So we want to remember this keyword var I is equal to 100. Then what?
Semicolon I, and then your operator of choice of like whether it's less than, or I mean, well, I guess for high to low.
Okay. So give me
Less than,
give me something to write.
like I less than, or no, I guess I is greater than. Oh yeah, I feel like I'm flipping it backwards, but less
Maybe
than.
I less than 1.
Okay.
I think
Trying
it's
to go to 0.
I greater than 0.
I
There you
greater than
go.
0.
Thank you.
Okay. While I is greater than 0. Why did we land on this? Because we're starting from a high number and then our ending point, this is our ending point. Well, combined with this here, this whole statement is, when do we want to stop decreasing, right? Because we have to decrease. So how do we decrease?
I
I
minus.
minus.
Right. I minus minus.
Could you do I minus 10 if you wanted to, or would that work?
You can make I minus, if you want to decrease by 10, you'd be skipping over every single you know, thing that's not, it'll be 90, 80, 70. You wanted to do that?
Well, I was just curious if I can make the iterations a little quicker is all. So
Oh yeah, you can.
you answered it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, you definitely can. You
It
would
wouldn't
say
be I minus 10, it would be I minus equals 10.
exactly. Thank you for saying that. Yes, it would be I minus equals 10. Okay. All right, so we've got this far. What else do I need to do? We need to do one more thing.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm gonna push the talk, but I know that minus minus I also works the same in for loops, but I still don't get the difference of minus minus I and I minus minus.
Minus minus I works. I didn't think it would. Maybe sometimes the syntax, when even when it's broken, it could still be interpreted. Maybe that's a way that the system has been built, but no, this is the way to write it. I minus minus. If minus minus I works the same as I minus minus, that's something to look into. I'd dig into that. But no, it's I minus I minus. Okay, so now what are we missing here on this for loop?
Curly brackets.
Okay, curly brackets. Open and close here. And then what did we say we wanted to do in the do something section?
Console.log.
Yes. Console.log I, right? So let's write this out in trace and see if this works. So we said for var I equals 100, and while I is greater than 0, I minus minus. Open this up and say console.log. Oh, I, just like that. Okay, so let's run this. And we have a red squiggly here, so that means we did something wrong. That means we have an extra one. So if we have anything like this that has a red underline, that means the code won't run unless we fix something here. So let's delete it. What did we do? Did we not add a semicolon somewhere?
We need
I think
another
you
one.
think, yeah, you need an extra one.
An extra what?
Curly.
An extra curly bracket, because you have the curly brackets for the function greet someone and then for but
Oh,
there
this
needs
one
to be another
here.
one for
Oh, I
main.
didn't see this function greet someone. It was invisible to my eyes. Okay, here we go. Thank you guys. Let's get this started now. Let's run it. You guys ate your Wheaties this morning. Okay, and just to confirm, you can use any of the tools that we have introduced on the test. Okay, any of the tools that we've introduced to you, you can use them on the test. Nothing is forbidden as far as any of these tools here.
So you mean like trace and algo app we can use?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So this is now iterating through. The number I is changing as we have expected, as we built it. And it's going to go all the way down to 0. It's taking its time. Let's skip to the end here to make sure it did it properly.
Hey Josh, where did we get the value for I? Like, where did that come from?
I is created right here. Var I equals 100.
But I mean, where did we get 100 from? Like, how did we, when you were doing the palindrome and then kind of doing an example, where did we pull that out of it? Where did we get that from? Or was that just a number?
The palindrome example, we're going to transition into something more like that right after this.
Okay.
So that doesn't relate, but as far as I goes, where did it come from and where does 100 come from? We're just iterating instead of going from 0 to 100. Now we're descending now. We're going to
we just picked 100. That was it. I mean, just
yes.
as about. Okay, thank you.
Yes. So now we're going to do something more like the concept of the palindrome. Good transition. All right. So now let's create an array. I'm going to say var r equals let's write some things here. Dojo there were number 3 cat so. Okay, just some strings and numbers in an array. What I want us to do is find a way to iterate from this point in the array in this direction. Okay, so help me build this for loop. Let's build a for loop that goes from the very end to the beginning. Now this is more like what I was introducing, a palindrome. Okay, so we have an idea of how to iterate from a high number to a low number. How do we iterate from the end of an array? And let's say this array is not just 4 in length. Let's say this array is going to get added a lot more strings and numbers, random strings and numbers. Okay, this is what, don't worry about what its use is. That's what it is. And we need to be able to read it from the end to the beginning. So let's build a for loop that would do that. Okay, so we already know we have to write the keyword for. All right, we'll open the parentheses. Now, help me get started. What's our starting point?
Are we going backwards?
Right, we're going from the end, this end here.
Okay, so R would you do R square bracket X dot or R dot length -4?
Minus
Or
4.
-4? Wouldn't that go backwards? Or I'm not sure if I get what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think you're getting around to the right idea. What I think you're opted. Let's figure it out.
Okay.
And Ben says I equals 0. So Ben, are you also suggesting something different? What are you suggesting?
I was trying to build it out from like the for loop begins with I equals 0 semicolon. I is less than array length semicolon.
Minus
I
1, right?
minus, yeah. Oh
Well,
yeah, array length -1. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Then
right, because
I
that's
minus
we want to
minus.
start from this position, right? Whatever this end position, we don't know how many number of items there are in the array. We just know we want the very end, right? So we can use array.length. Array.length is going to give us the length of the array. And then why do we subtract 1 from it?
Because arrays index always start at 0.
Right, so the length counting is going to be a little bit different from the index counting. It's going to be 1 more, so we have to subtract from it to get our index value at the very end of the array. So let's go ahead and write our starting point. How do we do that? Someone give me
Yeah.
the
I
keywords.
equals 0.
I equals
semicolon.
just I equals 0, or do I need some other word in there?
Could we do I
Var I?
equals?
Yes, var I. Var I. We need the var. That's important for now. Var I equals, and we said r dot length -1. Okay, that's our starting. And now what's our ending point?
Would it be I greater than -1?
Okay, that's one way to do it. While I is greater than -1. What about
Using just
using 0?
zero?
Yeah, 0. When we get to 0. So we can say if I is greater than 0. Well, when it gets to 0, we want it to print as well, right? So while I is greater than or equal to 0, and what do we want to do?
I
What's the
minus
last
minus.
step? My I minus minus, right? Yes. I minus minus. So we're going to decrease through this. Okay. And we're going to open up the brackets. This is the first step to writing a for loop. Now we have to do something. For, we have to iterate for a purpose. So what do we want to do? Well, at this point, I want to introduce, well, I want to make sure there's some clarification on something. I'm going to console log 2 different things here, and I want us as a class to tell me the difference, the meaning between the two, okay? So if I console log forgot and what's the difference between this one and this one?
Would the first one just yield the innards of the array, but the second one would actually show it in the format of an array between brackets?
Okay, simplify that for me.
So say the answer is a bracket that says 7 cat 3 dojo. Console log I would just say 7 cat 3 dojo with no brackets around it, whereas array bracket I would be bracket 7 comma cat comma 3 comma dojo bracket.
Can I answer?
Yeah, that's a very specific answer. What I'm looking for is this. This is the index. So this is just going to be a number, right? It's a number value. This is the value at that point in the array. Okay. The array at I, the array at this number is the value at that index point. Okay. So this would print what's in the array, 7, cat, 3, and dojo, like it was said. I is going to just print a number. It's going to start with array.length minus 1, however long that is. In this case, it's going to be the number 3. It's going to start at 3 and then decrease to 2, 1, and then finally, when it gets to 0, it's completed its course. All right. Do we understand this as a class? Let's run a poll. I want to make sure that we do. And
can you explain the difference one more time?
yes, and I'll write this on trace so that I can prove it to you. We can see this more visually. What's r dot length minus 1? What's the value of this here?
3.
Right?
Maximum index.
Depending on how long this is. In this case, ours is when we count the length, we count 1, 2, 3, 4. So r dot length minus 1. We want to target this very last index here. And we know that length counts from 1, 2, 3, 4. If we want to count indexes, we count 0, 1, 2, 3. So however long this array is, we know that the index value is just going to be 1 less than the array length. So that's why we put it in this format. So we're getting however long the array is. In this case, this value is 3.
So if you continued with your green markings, you went 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the green 4 would be outside of the square brackets, and that's why you would minus that to align with the 1, 2, 3, 4 of dot length.
Exactly. Yeah, 4 would be outside, and that's outside the brackets. That's in space, outer space. It doesn't exist.
And that's why you minus that?
Yes, so that I can start at index 3 of this array, so that I can get index 3 of this array. The very last piece here, 7.
So Josh, if we were logging I, that's just the iteration of the for loop, right? Versus logging the array of I. Is that
right?
Is that what
so
that's
if
what
we log I, it would start at 3, 2, 1, 0. That's what our console would print. Okay, if we
which is the iteration of the for loop, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's what we're changing, I's value.
Right.
But we can use I's value to access an index point in the array. So we can say R at this number. So it starts at 3. So R at 3, what's that? That's 7. So we start at this point. So this would print 7, cat, 3, dojo.
Because we minused array length minus 1, wouldn't it be 2, 1, 0? It wouldn't print 3.
Would it print 3? Oh, okay, yeah, I think no, it would print 3 because it says var I equals r dot length minus 1. Okay, while I is greater than 0, that's true. 3 is greater than 0. Console log I. So I is this value. It would console log 3. And let's now transition to trace so that we can see a visual proof of this. Okay, but is it making a little bit more sense? Is this becoming a little bit more clear, the difference? We're going from the end of the array to the beginning, and we're logging I versus the array at that value of I.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. It'll come around. Let's do a pulse check. And then we will build that here on trace here. So we said for var I equals r dot length minus 1, while I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. And we said console.log I console.log. Let's just start with console logging I. Let's just do this by itself. Okay. So we see this is the exact same for loop with the exact same array. We're starting at the very end here at this position, and then we're going to 0, which would be the very beginning position. We're subtracting to get to the beginning, and we are console logging I. So what do we expect to see? Can anyone tell me? While it runs.
3, 2, 1, 0.
3. Oh,
Yep. 3, 2, 1, 0. R dot length minus 1 is just a number value. It's the length of the array counted from 1, 2, 3, 4. We subtract 1 to get 3. And so we're starting from 3 all the way down to 0. So when we're console logging I, we're just console logging this number value that's changing. When we're console logging R at I, we're console logging an array value because we see the name of the array R, and then the open and closing brackets are asking for a index position. This could be a number, remember? It's if we say R at 0, we're targeting this one. This one is the first one reading from left to right. Reading from left to right, we start from 0. If we say R at 1, that means we'd be targeting this one here. But we want a value for I that's going to read all of them from right to left. So we want to get that changing value of I because I is going to be changing, decreasing from 3 to 0. So we want all those values, 3, 2, 1, 0. So if we give that changing I value in those brackets, it will print all those values. So now let's see this. Let's erase our console log I. Let's just see our values printed. Okay, so we have here in our terminal 7 cat 3 dojo. 7 cat 3 dojo. That means it read from right to left using that number value, that changing number value. R at I is able to print each value in the array reading from the right to the left, from the end to the beginning. Okay. Now let's run another pulse check to see again how we're feeling about this concept. It's a little bit clear. I'm not sure who originally asked. I didn't see the name right away. Still getting used to your guys' voice to your face. Oh, okay. Don't know who spoke up, but I hope this is clear. All right, so now let's introduce a new concept. We are going to now combine our for loops with if statements. Okay. For loops combine with if statements. For loops combined with if statements. How can we do this? Okay, this is our working area. We're going to start with a for loop. And what I want our for loop to do is count from 3 to 0. 3, 2, 1, 0. And let's just start with that, okay? And when I get to 0, I want to do something specifically, but we won't get to that yet. Let's just write the for loop starting from 3 to 0. So how do we do that? We say var
equals, or so var I equals 3.
Okay.
Because we're counting down from 3.
Exactly. Var I equals 3. Okay. Next step.
If I is greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to 0.
Less than? Are we
or greater than or
increasing?
equal to 0?
Okay.
Greater than or equal to 0.
Why is it greater than?
Because it starts at 3 and it's supposed to go to 2, then 1.
All right. And you're checking if it's gotten to 0, if it's still greater than 0, because if you're still greater than 0, you're still doing the decreasing.
And then whenever you equal 0, you don't go below that.
Right. So so if I is greater than or equal to 0, and then
I minus minus.
Exactly. Yeah. We're going to decrease by just 1. Okay. So we have our for loop. Now I want it to say lift off if we've gotten to 0. Okay. So let's console log each number. Okay, let's console log each number.
Console.log I.
Parentheses
I.
Okay.
Semicolon.
And let's write our if statement. I know it's a little crammed in here, but let's write our if statement.
So if parentheses, and then I'll let someone else take it.
Okay.
Unless no one else wants to. I'm sure someone does.
If parentheses.
If I is equals to 0.
Nice. If I is equal to 0, and we're writing in our space here, we're overlapping. What do we want to do? Console log liftoff, right?
Yep.
So now we're able to iterate from a high number to a low number. And depending on, we can make a condition here that says if we have a certain value, okay, if I reaches a certain value, I want you to do a specific thing at that value. Okay, so here we had the two pillars I told you. We had for loops and if statements. Combined, now we have a function, right? We have something that does something. It counts from 3 to 0, and at 0, it does a specific thing. It triggers this check, which looks for it, and then does this. It prints something. Okay, so now that we've combined them, we should be able to T-diagram to find out where we are in the for loop as it iterates, and if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing at that point, I equaling 0, then having to lift off. Okay. So let's write this on trace now. And then the next step after this is to use an if statement with the modulo symbol. We're going to check to see, we're going to read through an array after this to see if its values are odd or even. For now, let's just write this on trace to see if it works. We have one more after this, and then that'll be, I think, enough for the day to prep you guys for the test. Okay, so let's build this. We said a for loop with an if statement in it. So we said var I equals 3, while I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. This is going to start at 3, decrease to 0. And while we do that, we're going to console.log I, and if, okay, just wrote the if statement. Now we just have to write the condition here. If I is equal to 0, then I want to console.log lift off. Okay, let's run this. Okay, so we're going to console log I. I is 3 right now. It's greater than or equal to 0, so it's entered. So I is at 3, so let's keep track from here. Console logged 3. 2, it's going to console log 1. And as soon as it hits 0, it's going to console log 0. And then it console logs liftoff. So we've done this correctly. We've done this correctly now. Okay, so let's start another poll to ask how well we feel about understanding the concept of combining an if statement with a for loop. An if statement within a for loop can be a powerful thing. Right? This is back to our analogy of the restaurant. The waitress reads through an array and asks array of customers. If the customer is less than an age, they will get a discount price. That's a if statement within a for loop, that whole concept of doing that action. Okay, so now what we want to do is read through an array. Let's do that. Let's do an analogy. Reading through an array of different numbers, and if a number is greater than a value, then we are going to console log saying something like you get the discount. Okay, we'll start from there. We'll build on that, and then that will be the end. Okay, so let's write that on our blackboard. Let's say var var people list. I should say list of, let's start over. People age list, var people age list. Give it something descriptive. Equals, okay, this is the age of people in our list. We're gonna have an elderly person, to middle age, a 4-year-old, and 2 middle-aged people, and a teenager. Okay, so this is the age group of the people that just walked in. We need to read through the list and determine if anyone is less than 10 years old, they eat with the discount. Okay, so let's read through this list. And I'm reading the comments here. Austin's asking, quick unrelated question. If the assignment is marked practice, we don't have to do it, correct? That's correct. And okay, so let's read through this list. How do we do this? Someone give me the steps.
You'll set up your for loop.
Right, okay.
And be var people of age, I think.
Okay. So we have to read through this list, right?
Right.
And so does it matter if we read left to right or right to left?
No.
Okay, so let's read it from left to right. How do we start at the left point?
I equals 0.
Right. Okay, so we say var I equals 0.
Semicolon.
Okay. What's our ending point?
I is less than r dot length minus 1.
Okay. Less than or equal to, or we can just say less than r dot length, right? Well, I is less than r dot length. Because we don't need it to be that very point when it's just less than. If it's less than or equal to, then we can say r dot length minus 1. So we can say, well, I is less than, that's a big variable.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be people ageless because that's your array, right? Instead of
Yeah.
r dot. Okay.
Yep. People age list dot length. Okay. Semicolon. And then what do we do at the end here?
I plus plus.
Yes.
Okay. While we do this, what's the rule that we're wanting to check?
Check to see if anyone is 10 years old or younger.
Right. Okay. So what do we know that we need at this point?
If statement?
Yes.
If statement.
Okay. I'll do that in red to differentiate here. If
parentheses I equals 10.
Equals 10, do they have to be exactly 10 years old to get the discount?
Oh no.
Less than or equal.
Less than or equal to.
If I is less than or equal to 10. Yes. To 10. Then we print, you get a discount. So we say console log Okay. All right.
Wouldn't it be if people age list at index I is less than or equal to 10?
Yes. Okay, that's what we should have done. All right. If people age list at I is less than or equal to 10, because it's not, our I is going to decrease or increase 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's actually going to print this console log if we leave it at I, just like this. So whoever noticed that, major points. If we do this by itself, we would have broken this. We would have failed. So how can we correct this now? We just said the answer. Someone else say it now.
Put square bracket over the I.
Yeah,
Or
let's correct this over here and this just to the left of it. I'm going to say if
array.
people age list. So we have to name the specific array. People age list at I. That's going to read the specific value, 17, 45, or 4, 68. All those values, in order to read them, you have to say this specific array at this index here, I. Okay, let's correct this on trace and run it. And do one more practice after that, and then we'll be done for the lecture. Okay, so let's run this on trace. Good catch. Who caught that, by the way?
I think it was me.
Oh, nice job, Kurt. Okay. So we said var people age list equals, what do we say? 45, 55, 4, 17, and 26. That's good enough. Okay, so we have our for loop for I equals, var I equals 0. That's our starting point. And while I is less than r dot length, no, not r dot length, it's people age list dot length. Got myself there. And as soon as, do you see how as soon as it's being put into use, it highlights itself, or it ungrays? It's because it's noticed it's being used. It's when a variable is like declared but never used, it will gray out like that. So when you actually say people age list dot length,
You wrote I less than twice.
oh yeah, I got carried away, got excited. Okay, and then we want to increase. Thanks for catching that. And our if statement,
Should that I be in a square bracket? Oh no, sorry.
okay. So we said if people age list at I is greater than or equal to 10, then we say you get a discount. Okay, so this
Wouldn't
is,
it be less than?
Yeah, why isn't it less than?
oh, excuse me. Less than or equal to 10. That's a good catch as well. You guys are ready for the exam, I can tell. Okay, so what is it doing? Let's start from the beginning. It reads our variable, people age list. It's created that variable on the T diagram here, people age list. It's going to read I, starts at 0. Checked our if statement, wasn't true. And then we are skipped, it went so fast, it went through one so fast here. It's going to check if people age list at 1 is less than or equal to 10. People age list at 1 is 55. So that if statement doesn't go. I increases, it's going to go to 2. Is I at 2 going to trigger the if statement?
Yes.
Yes. And there we are. Print to our terminal. You get a discount.
Will it still iterate through the rest of the list?
It will
even
still,
though it exited already at index 2?
yes, as it still finds it, it's going to iterate to the end of the list because that's what we told our for loop to do. And for every iteration in our for loop, our if statement is going to check, right? We want to see through the whole list of people. Maybe there's our 10 or less year old in our list. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish this loop. What number are we at? We're 4. So we're at the end here. It doesn't trigger the if statement and we know we're done. So good question. It will iterate all the way to the end of the list, even if it triggered. Now, let's say we wanted to build this function to say, if we find only one of the 10 or less year olds gets a discount, okay? You can't have an infinite amount of 10 or less year olds come in at the restaurant and they all eat for free. You know, only one of them gets to eat for free. So this function should stop at the moment we get to we find the first 10 or less year old. So how can we write our code to do that? Okay, so with that, we're going to introduce the concept of the break. The break exits the function like a return would, but it doesn't return anything with it. It doesn't give a value to the function. It stops running the function. So what we're going to do in our trace now is going to say break. Okay, we're going to break at this point, and we're going to add another 10 or less year old. We're going to add a 3-year-old at the very end of the list. But before we get to the end of the list, as soon as we find our 4-year-old, we're going to stop. So let's run this now.
Do we not have to put a semicolon to the break statement?
It would be good syntax, but it's still going to work without it. Okay, we get to 2, we get to our break, and we finish the for loop. It doesn't read through the rest of the list because we're only looking for 1, the first one that we find. So it didn't read to 3, and it didn't print this console log twice. Okay, so you can read about the breaks at this point in loops 2 in the platform. But that is how it works. So let's get a poll to get some understanding of how well we're understanding this concept of the break. How a break works, how it stops us in the code.
Josh, how did the break know to stop once it reaches the first value? In this instance, it's the or the first what's the word I'm looking for? In this instance, it's 10. How did it know that? Is that just inherent to breaks? That's just the nature of a break? Is that when that first one is
the break is inside this if statement. So it knows based on being inside this if statement. As soon as you enter this if statement, you iterate and you do everything in its to-do section from top to bottom. So it first console logs you got a discount, or you get a discount. And then as soon as it finished reading that console log, it breaks. It breaks out of
Okay.
this if statement. It breaks out of the for loop. And that's why it stops reading the for loop.
Okay.
But
Right.
what if you just put a comma after the 10 and put 1 or 2? Wouldn't that allow it to run certain amounts of time? So if you put 2, it would run twice, right?
You want me to put a comma 2 like this?
Yeah, and take away the break.
Okay, so tell me what the goal of making this would do. What is,
So how about change the 2 to 1 so you only run once?
so this 10 is checking if any of these numbers in the array is less than this value. There's only two numbers, 4 and 3. Do you see that? Just want to make sure we're on the same page because I'm not understanding your question.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I was just asking if that would like declare like certain amounts of time that it will run if you put a comma and then
oh, I see. No, I don't think it would do that. Vincent, do you know an answer to that question? I don't think it would do that. Run it a second time if we specify with the comma to do that.
In an if statement?
Yeah, Isaiah's asking how can we make this if statement run check if there's only, 2 people in the list to run this if statement twice, even if you get one and break on the second time.
I mean, since to only do it 2 times this if statement, right? I would
Yeah.
think you just need like a create a counter variable.
Yeah, you create a counter variable to count how many times you've done it, and then you can stop at that second time when you note on your counter. But you wouldn't write a comma and then 2 to say run this twice. There would be another way of going around that. So I just had a moment of doubt. I had to ask you, Vincent. Thanks. No, yeah, you're right. You would create something that would count how many times you've reached this if statement, and if you've reached to that count number, then you would stop. That's how you would increase that. So good question, Isaiah.
So out of curiosity then, Josh, could you show us what it would look like if if the array had, say, 2 people under the age of 10 and you wanted it to show,
Okay, sure.
you wanted it to break after 2 people got through?
Yes. So
How
what
would
you
add
do,
that conditional?
you create a counter. And the purpose of this counter is just to count. And we started at 0. Okay, we start our count at 0. And so if we reach this point, then we want to increase the count as well. So we say count plus plus. So we reach count plus plus. And within this if statement, we can write another one saying if count is, or not even within this if statement, but well, yeah, in here we can say if count is oops. Is greater than 2, greater than or equal to 2.
I would just do double equals to 2, right? Because that's
Right.
what people want. They just want to see once it hits 2 break.
Yeah, either way works. This
Would
is
it
more
still
specific.
be count or counter because your variable is count?
Counter.
Okay.
Yes, you're right. Counter. Okay. So every time you enter this if statement, you console log, you get a discount. And let's add a third 10 or less year old in here, 7-year-old. Okay. And so every time we reach this if statement, we increase the count. If count reaches 2, we break. Okay, so we know at 2, we're going to reach our first one and we get our first console log. So we've reached this number 4. And let's see our counter change. Okay, change to 1. All right, so we've noted our first encounter with a 10 or less year old. Okay. And where's our next one? It's gonna be coming up here. We encountered it. All right, we're at 3. We're about to increase our counter to 2. Now we've reached the number, our limit. And if counter equals 2, we enter this if statement, and then we break. We finished. So it ran the console log twice, even though we have 3 10 or less year olds.
So I have a quick question.
Yes.
To be more specific, if you were to say just go through an entire array length, so could you add the counter to the array length? That way you could just sift through it and then you get the outcome in the terminal of each one. Would it be better to break with a counter or just go all the way through? Would it still, without the break, just put that the outcome of the dot length, like you get a discount?
Well, let's say you're given a different list of numbers each time. You don't know, maybe there's only 2 10 or less year olds, and then they're at the very end of the list. So you always want to iterate to the very end of the list. You know, maybe they're at the beginning, maybe they're at their end, but you want to always be able to read the whole list before you determine if you have to stop or log. You get a discount. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, it does. That's
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, in the last concept, I know we're going over lecture time here. Let's change this now. All right, and the boss of our restaurant is telling us, that we're trying to have a fun day, and if anybody's age is an even number, all right, if anybody's age is an even number, they eat with a discount. So how then can we change our if statement to check if the age of someone in our list is an even number, and so that they can eat with the discount? So what do we change here in our if statement? How do we do that?
If people age list at index I modulus 2 is equal to 0. You want even number, right?
Yes.
Is equal to 0, then console log.
Okay, so this is saying if that number at people age list of that index, so that value here, if let's start with 45, right? That's our first value at 0. If 45 modulus 2 divided by 2, what that remainder is after it's divided by 2, if that remainder is equal to 0, is that remainder equal to 0? What's 45 divided by 2?
Remainder of 1.
Yeah, it's divided by 2. It's 44 with the remainder of 1. So 1 is not equal to 0. So that's not a true statement. So we would not enter this if statement. For the values that have like 4, 26, we should get 2 console logs here when we reach those numbers, because if their value divided by 2 equals 0, meaning divided by 2 and their remainder equals 0, then we should console log, you get a discount, because we know that then their age has an even number. So let's run this and see what we get. And that'll be our last algo for the day here. Okay, so we start at 0, 45. Now we're checking 55. Now we're checking 4. Console log, do you get a discount? checking 3. Index at 4, index at 5. We already logged the second you get a discount. It passed 26. What point was 26 here? Yeah, index 5. 0, 1, 2, 3. Did I count that right? Oh no, it wasn't 5. There we are. Index 4. That's where it was. Index 4, we get the console log, you get a discount. That's our second console log for our second even number in the list. Okay, so let's get a poll for how well we understand how to check if a number is even within an array of numbers. The way you would change this to odd is by just changing one equal sign to a exclamation mark, the first one. This would check for odd. Okay, and with that, do we have any questions? Any remaining questions for the day? About anything we've covered? For loops, if statements within for loops. Reading from an array forward to back, back to forward. How to run on trace. Anything related to that? Okay. So then our goal for today is to reach Algo app level 7. Once we've completed level 7, we should have finished all our assignments, all our required assignments. And, you know, we can't give any feedback on the Algo app assignments that you either pass or fail based on the app. So any of the other coding assignments, we're able to give you feedback if you'd like, one-on-one. So feel free to drop in our office here right after the lecture, you know, if you'd want to review any of your coding challenges.
For the exam, so for the coding aspect of the exam, are we allowed to run the code to see if
you can use any of the tools we've introduced to you at this point? Python Runner, Trace.
Okay.
Is it going to be a multiple choice or we got to actually write it out?
Well, it's not going to be multiple choice. You have to write it out. It's going to ask you to predict the outcome of 7 algorithms, 7 functions. Then you will have to build 3 of them by scratch for by yourself. You have to get an 8 to pass, so you have to build at least 1 by yourself if you're going to, you know, assume that you'll just get a perfect score on the other ones that where you just read and determine the output, right? When you read and determine the output, that's what you're doing on the Algo app. So writing by hand functions, that's what we've been doing in the lectures and in our assignments.
also from yesterday, have you confirmed whether or not we can look at the challenges for help in the exams?
You can look at any of your assignments, any of the tools we've given you. You just can't talk to each other.
Okay.
So does that mean we could input the code into Visual Studio and then try it out there before putting in our answer?
We haven't introduced that to you. If you figured out how to do that, then that's up to you.
Okay.
Okay, but I'd encourage you just use the tools that we've introduced if you want to use the tools. Okay, at this point, you guys should be able to train yourself to read the algorithm codes without any help, just T-diagramming, the way you should be practicing to learn how to do. Okay, if we have no further questions, we'll go ahead and break out into groups. Again, our challenge today is Algo app level 7. We'll do an attendance check right after this to make sure you guys are working. Catch up on any previous assignments to make sure you have all your core assignments so that you're eligible to take the test after our 2 p.m. lecture. Okay, I'll go over the instructions. It'll be brief, and then we'll go out and do our 90-minute exam. So, okay, if we have no further questions, our goal, you should complete level 7, but let's try to get through 12.
The staff here. So let's name this.
I must have cut out for a second. That's never happened.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, we were scared for you.
I'm just testing you guys and make sure you're focused. Okay, get through level 12, the algo app, so you can pass your test. Let's stop this recording before anything else happens. All right, so no further questions. We good? Okay, we're good.